Hello and welcome to today's meeting of Democrats of Greater Tucson. My name is Larry Bodine and I'm the president, and I'll be your host today. And our speaker is none other than Councilman Paul Cunningham. Let's take care of a few announcements, starting with our membership director, Kathy Ramage-White.
Where it's really hot is where the action is. And the action is with the members of the Democrats of Greater Tucson. So some of you may be listening in and you haven't yet joined. Well, let's eliminate that negativity in your lives. And remember, it's only $20 to join the Democrats of Greater Tucson. You only pay once a year, and it's a good place to be. You've got a lot of good people also viewing these wonderful speakers. And just like we've got Paul Cunningham today, we get great speakers here, and it is wonderful when you are here, and especially as a member. So if you're not yet joined up, please go to our website and click on join now, and you can take care of everything. Larry, I'll give it right back to you.
Right. Thank you so much, Kathy. And, right on to everything that you said. Lucy, I see you have your hand raised. It sounds like you have an announcement.
Yes, I always have an announcement of one or another. I just want to give people a heads up to mark their calendars for July 10th for our next Tanca Verde meeting. We are having Superintendent Catherine Hoffman. So we are trying to reschedule our LD9 legislators along with our LD10 legislators, all 6 of them, for our August meeting, which is, I think, the 14th. It's the second Saturday. And the legislature should be out by then so they can give a very good wrap up. Thanks.
Let's turn to Sandy Binion, who is our program director on the board, and she's the one who puts together all these wonderful programs for Democrats of Greater Tucson. Sandy, what have we got coming up?
Coming up next week, we have Marco Lopez, who has announced that he is running for governor of Arizona. He was the first one to announce, and so we've got him scheduled for next week to talk to us. And then following that, we have Diane Neville, who is the chairperson of LD10, Democratic chairperson of LD10. And then the following week, we have Miranda Lopez, who is the new director over at the Pima County Democrats office. We've got some interesting things coming up, and just a sneak preview, I do have Katie Hobbs also scheduled later in the, thank you.
So nice going, Sandy. Thanks very much. We're really looking forward to all of those programs. And now I want to turn to our happy hour director, and that would be Christina Early. In about 2 weeks, we've got a fun in-person event coming up. Tell us all about it, Christina.
I like that new title you gave me. And also, everybody, it's Flag Day. I hope you put your flag up. What Larry's referring to is our second Drinking Democratically Happy Hour. It's going to be on June the 29th from 4 to 6 p.m. at Augustine's Kitchen downtown, just west of I-10 on Congress in the Mercado. Larry has sent out information about this in the newsletter. There is a map, and I know people were asking me earlier of how to get there, and there is a map in that invitation. There's also a map in the registration if you click the link that I put in the chat. This is a great opportunity for us to get together face to face. So many of us are fully vaccinated. Our last event, we had 30 Democrats, and we just had a great time talking politics, getting to know each other again, seeing folks we hadn't seen for a while, meeting new people that were just interested. The restaurant, Augustine's Kitchen, is providing the room to us at no charge, but that means that we have to get our own drinks from the bar, but they were delivering the food to us, so that was pretty cool. They're excited that we're there because it is June. We're hoping that folks will come down, have a drink, support this local business as we get a chance to talk to each other about politics. Thanks. Don't forget to register.
Look forward to seeing everybody. It's going to be a great event. So far, we're the only Democratic organization that's meeting in person. I just love the last happy hour, and I look forward to the next one. And with that, let me introduce our speaker today. That would be City Councilman Paul Cunningham. He has represented Ward 2 on the Tucson City Council since 2010, and he has been the vice mayor since 2014. A native Tucsonan, Paul is a longtime community activist with 19 years of professional and volunteer public service. In addition to many volunteer positions, Paul has served as a Pima County juvenile probation officer, a basketball coach in the Sunnyside School District, and is chairman of the board for Team Tucson, which is a charity that is combating teen homelessness. And in the news, Paul has stated that he opposes the reauthorization of the Regional Transportation Authority, and he's led the push for higher water rates for suburban homeowners. Paul has also championed preseason professional soccer as an economic development engine for Tucson, and he's committed to safeguarding Tucson's water supply. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Paul. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everybody. Let me begin by saying welcome back, almost. I think that our community has responded to the pandemic well. And despite some's best efforts to downplay what the pandemic was or is, Tucson's response in cooperation with Pima County was very good and positive. We had a robust testing program. We were very fast to distribute and deploy the vaccine as it became available. And now multiple areas have achieved some semblance of adult herd immunity throughout Tucson. That I am grateful for. It is very exciting. Also, I brought my Arizona Wildcat baseball hat. They have made their 18th World Series. When AAA left Tucson, it's something that my father and I have done for the last about 25 years, and that is go to Arizona baseball games on a regular basis. My dad holds when Arizona baseball was moved to High Corbett, my dad actually sat in the same row as Coach for the first 2 or 3 years before he passed. So very happy with this team. I think we're a little thin well, we're not thin, we're just a little inconsistent pitching, but I have no doubt that this team has what it takes to go all the way in Omaha. So those are some of the things I wanted to open with. Then I wanted to tell you about the city right now, independent of water. And that is that the city fiscally is in good shape. It isn't really a matter of funding for the first time since I started on the council. It's a matter of actual resources and where to get them, and where to get asphalt, and where to get street workers, and where to get lifeguards. We don't have enough lifeguards right now. We have enough money to open all the pools. We don't have enough lifeguards trained to open all the pools. So that's been an interesting venture this last few months. It's kind of a new phenomenon, but we're working through it as fast and as best we can. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is differential water rates. Let me preface by saying that this idea started many years ago. And we have to go back to 1997 when then George Miller asked the city council to reject the annexation. Mayor Miller always warned me that we need to beware of an urban rotten core. Back then, there was no consequence to doing that. The city rejected the Casas Adobes incorporation and said, no, we want you to annex, just like they always have. Casas Adobes did not want to annex, and they did not become members of any municipality. They tried to put it on a vote and were turned down. And the state legislature did not like this. They did not like that the city residents of Pima County were basically having their cake and eating it too, and the county was providing municipal services. They didn't like it. So they passed a law somewhere in 05, 06, which redid the formula for Maricopa and Pima County on how state shared revenues are distributed to different cities and towns. And basically they said that if you do not, you get a per capita allotment in state shared revenues. But if you, it is calculated on whether or not how a person lives in a city or a town. If they live in an unincorporated area, you do not receive those state share revenues. It was basically a ploy by the legislature to exploit our region. And Pima County said, well, we're going to take you to court and we're going to fight this, which they should have. And we thank them for that, except they lost in court. Because they lost in court because the Supreme Court said, well, you don't really have to pay it. All you have to do is incorporate and you'll pay it. That's been going on for 15 years. In the first few years, it was 20, 30, $40 million. It now has a gross of an $120 million price tag. Now, the county administrator will probably argue that point and say that it's really only $50 million when you consider some money that's being taken from the county. I have a long respect for his ability to understand government. Our people, our own city people, think it's more like $75 to $90 million. You really don't know until it actually happens. Either way, even if it's only $50 million, there's, in my experience, there's no such thing as only $50 million. $50 million is a substantial amount that we're forfeiting. Also, right around that same time, totally having nothing to do with this, in 1997, the county issued a HERF bond on state shared revenues. They borrowed against them. They issued $1.8 billion for road and infrastructure improvements, and they split that with the cities and towns in Pima County. In 2017, that bond was retired, and they did not have to make that $50 to $60 million annual payment. As a result, they started a program called Pay Go, where they would pay as they go to fund roads. Now, remember, everyone in Pima County is paying that tax. Every single person who pays property taxes in Pima County, whether you live in Tucson, Marana, Oro Valley, Sarita, or unincorporated Pima County, is paying that sales tax. That property tax. The county is using all of that property tax, that delta, to fund road construction and repair only in unincorporated Pima County. So for me, that wasn't very fair. And I wanted to know what we could do. Well, the only thing we can do is nothing. We don't really have any legal recourse to challenge those two things. We can probably take them to court about PAYGO. We can't make people annex. And for me, I just don't think that's really fair to the city of Tucson. One thing that we could have done for the last 40 years was institute differential rates. But we want to be good neighbors about it. Now, differential rates exist all over the country. They exist in multiple cities in Arizona. Most cities in Arizona charge as much as 50% more in differential rates. I've never advocated that. I've always said it should be 10% for the lowest tier, maybe 20% for the second tier, and then 30% for any tier above. That means for your bill to go up any more than $20, you'd have to use a lot of water. In the scenario that I'm proposing, I'd like to see it should be about an average delta of $4.88 for a 10 CCF customer, which is the average use in unincorporated Pima County. In the city, the average use is 7 CCFs. Now, there's some things that people need to keep in mind here about fairness. One is that despite having only 29% of the customers, the out of municipal residents have 42% of the infrastructure that we maintain is outside. Not only that, the city can't write any laws to ask people to conserve water in construction projects, new construction permitting. We have all these rainwater harvesting and gray water harvesting incentives in the city that we can enforce through our DSD department. We can't do that outside the city. And finally, people should remember that every single time that the utility issues a bond, borrows money, pays a claim, it's backed by the city taxpayers. Now, traditionally, in the last few years, the utility has reimbursed the city, but that's not always been the case. So with all those things in mind, and the fact that the city of Tucson residents actually pay an extra $1.30 a month right now as it is, I propose the differential rate, a modest $4 to $7 increase for non-city residents as a matter of policy, not a matter of cost of service. We could do a cost of service analysis. Most experts would have indicated to me that it would demonstrate an 8 to 15% increase. And we may do that, but I want to do that. I would want to do that independent. I want to do this as a matter of policy. There has to be an incentive for people to live in the city, and they're not being treated fairly, especially right now by Pima County. So those are the things that are going on. From a water standpoint, we are not where I want to be. We have worked so hard over the last 10 years to bring us back to a 50 to 75-year water supply. We have worked so hard over the last 10 years to initiate water rates that encourage conservation in the whole system. We have worked so hard in the last 10 years to come up with creative, cutting-edge things that allowed us to leverage existing water. The problem in conservation, the problem is that with mega drought, with a 4-year drought, with a 20-year low in Lake Mead hit a record low this week. A lot of our efforts are for naught. In other words, everyone else is going to end up taking advantage of us. We also have first rights of refusal to a lot of that water because we have the most wet water storage and we have the most paper water credits. I'll answer your questions, but basically there's 2 types of water. There's paper water, that's water you have rights to, and there's wet water, that's water you actually have in storage, whether it be in your aquifer or in wet water storage below the ground and can be wheeled. And so we have worked extremely hard to have that 1 year of wet water storage. We've worked extremely hard on recharge. The Santa Cruz Heritage Project is a great example in which we're seeing the wells build back up. We also have another problem, and that is during the 70s, 80s, and the 90s, the Air Force and airlines used a considerable amount of PFAS foams and other cleansing systems and other oils on aircraft to preserve them and have them working, and that went into the soil. And as a result, we have a significant plume of 1,4-dioxane, PFAS, and PFOS, which are all different chemicals. There's multiple versions of them in our soil, and we have to clean that up. We are working with our Senate delegation and congressional delegation for a $100 million bond to be able to build the facilities necessary to clean up that water. In the meantime, we had to shut off, I want to say 6 different wells. Only one we had been drawing from in the last year or two, but still, it is not a good situation. We have to be good stewards of our water long term, and I'm proud that I have made that effort important for the last 10 years, but we have to continue. Last thing about this incorporation / water policy nonsense. You don't have to pay it. Just like the city said, the state said to the county, you don't have to lose out on the 90 million. The city's going to say to the county residents, you don't have to pay it. You can annex, you can incorporate. We won't fight any incorporation. The vision here would be for certain areas to incorporate that should have incorporated a long time ago. But I'd really like to see Vail, Catalina Foothills, and Green Valley all incorporate once and for all, and finally put that effort forward. I think it would be beneficial to the state and the county, especially our region. So that's my spiel, and I'm happy to take any questions.
All right, Paul, thank you very much. We already have a question from Gail Camaras. Gail, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask away.
Thank you, Larry, and thank you, Paul. My question is, there seems to be a clash of agendas with the water thing. I personally support differential rates, but if we're going to encourage annexation, that sort of means that we're also going to encourage sprawl. To me, the differential water rates help encourage infill into the city rather than sprawling out into the desert. But if the alternative is annexation, then we're just sprawling more, and I don't know how that helps our water issues, our water quantity issues. Thank you.
Great question and great comment. I should have touched on this. Actually, quite frankly, I think it's the opposite. I think that right now the current system is causing sprawl. We have so many people wanting to annex in for zoning. We shouldn't be trading annexing for zoning. We're not trading annexation for water. We're trading annexation for zoning. Matter of fact, in Tanque Verde Valley's case, which I think there's value in having the suburban ranches and stuff, I'd rather see a special suburban ranch zone where if they stay as suburban ranch, they don't have to pay those rates. And the reason is because I'd rather not build out there. I want that ring and that buffer that transitions us to the national forest. If Catalina Foothills had its own zoning, or areas right outside the city had their own towns, which those people were voted for, then that would actually make people who try to go in for rezoning think it's actually a better move than what we have now, where every single time a person owns a parcel near the city, they come to the city and goes, hey, we'll annex in if we get an upzoning. Well, we really don't want to do that. We want you to get an upzoning inside the city. So I actually think the opposite is true, but I totally understand where you're coming from. It's very easy to assume that new towns mean sprawl, but I counter and say that a lot of these towns will probably want to stay bedroom communities and want to stay a certain way. You can't convince me that folks in Green Valley or in Catfoot want to have new subdivisions in their desert. They want to have they want to have a giant downtown. They're just not going to want those things. They may in 20, 30 years, but that would actually be a result of infill by then. So I think that this is actually a sprawl stopper. I think sprawl happens at a geometric rate because of the way the system is set up now, where consistently developers are trading annexation for zoning.
All right, Steve Early, member of our board, has a question. Go ahead, Steve.
This is not anything to do about water. I want your opinion on the statue of Pancho Villa on our streets in downtown Tucson, and how we are paying homage to a man that murdered Americans and was probably a traitor because he went to the work, or he went into the Mexican army. And I think that's against the law also. So I was just wondering, because I can't get an honest answer from anybody else in the city.
If you really studied the history, that guy wasn't a freedom fighter. He was really more of a gangster. And it's probably not the statue we want, but there's some cultural sensitivity to that. And so what I'd like to see is if we can figure out a way to replace that statue with someone a little more prominent, but also reflects that cultural sensitivity. I think that's a great way for that to work. And but I agree that Pancho Villa is probably not the person to be representing that.
All right, Michael Bryan, one of our board members, has a question. Go ahead, Mike.
Hey, Paul. I've actually put this in the chat. I just wanted to see if you had any thoughts about doing a riverbed redevelopment with like local reservoirs or reestablishing flow like Scottsdale did with the Rio Salado project as a long-term water and redevelopment option.
That's the plan. All the water stuff we're doing now, as long as we can keep collecting, if we ever get TARP fixed and we get that extra 2,300 acre feet, plus we get the 3,700 acre feet that the county kind of owes us, and if we're able to wheel that through a 36-inch purple pipe and duplicate the Santa Cruz heritage in both the Rolito and Pantano Wash, I think that's definitely worth it for us. I think there's a couple options, including collector tanks or even like a collector pond, which would help us wheel that water into green space. So I think there's a lot of things we can do. Healthy washes and healthy creeks are part of deserts. And because we're in a drought, the only way we can bring those healthy creeks back is to help nature move along a little bit. So we'll be there for that, but we've got to get through the point where we have enough water to do that first.
Thank you.
All right, we've got a question from Kathy Ramage White. Go ahead, Kathy.
Hey, Paul, thanks a lot for coming and speaking for us today.
My pleasure.
My question is totally selfish. When is 22nd Street from Camino Seco to Harrison going to get Houghton, all the way up to Houghton, going to get fixed?
Well, that's a great question. And that probably brings me to the part I kind of missed. And that is that you'd have to ask the RTA, because the
Okay.
RTA are the ones in charge of that project, and they're the ones who removed it from last on the list. And because I'm selfish a little bit too, that's one of the reasons why I'm very disappointed and don't trust the RTA. The projects that we needed the most in Ward 2 were the last in line, and the projects we needed the least in Ward 2 that served people that weren't my constituents. To me, that's unacceptable.
Okay. Well, it's a good answer, but it's a bad answer, if you know what I mean.
Well, I get it. And if we can get that project done and moving in the next 2 years, I hope we can, but I can't really count on the RTA right now. One of the reasons why I've been vocal about maybe kind of putting them on the shelf next time.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
All right, Susie Anderson has a question. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Susie.
Was just wondering how much it would cost to retrofit the closed treatment plant on the south side to clean the PFAS out of the water wells. How?
That would be part of it, but remember, we'd have to build another wheeling and pump at the side of the plume to get it there. And even retrofitting it, we'd need, and the capacity of that facility isn't large enough. So the way I understand it is, even with that being retrofitted and changing out the current one, we're looking at $50 to $75 million.
Whoa.
And don't hold me on that. I don't want to be too off the cuff on that. I know that that's what they've told me so far, but there's more information that I wish I had for you guys, and I just don't have it yet.
We have Mike Bryan with another question. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, Paul, you've touched on this a couple of times about the RTA. What's your ideal relationship with the RTA and the situation with transportation? Here in
I
Tucson?
think a couple things. I think the board has to be reconstituted, where we get representation from the city. It doesn't need to be dominated by the city. I'm not that ridiculous in that we have to hold all the power. It should be reasonable. We should have 40 to 45% of the weighted voting. And unless we can find a way to do that, I'm just not going to be on board. I'm sorry. I don't trust that process right now. I'm not happy about it. And as a result, I'm probably skeptical to get started on it.
That's right. I understand you're teaching summer school and you're on your way and now you're in the building. We do have a question from Paul Stapleton Smith. And he says, Paul, thank you for all your work. As the leaders of our Democratic Party, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and the U.S. House have insisted on the necessity of a $15 minimum wage to help our most vulnerable working families. He wants to know, do you support the Tucson fight for $15 an hour?
Well, considering that I wrote the law that made it for all city employees to start at $15 an hour, I think that's a natural progression. I'd much rather be able to, not that we can do this, but if my priority was universal health care for kids and $15 an hour, I'd take universal health care for kids first, but $15 an hour, if the voters want to do it in the city limits, that's fine. Just remember, it puts us at a disadvantage. It will cause sprawl because businesses will want to open outside the city limits. We're much better off doing it countywide. And that's what I challenge the organizers of that ordinance for. I'm doing a assembly right now on teamwork. I have to get started, but I really appreciate the opportunity for you guys having me today.
Well, best of luck, Paul, and we'll see you around the campfire.